second song is by Jen Shyu, who is a composer, vocalist, multi-instrumentalist from Illinois. She is of Taiwanese and East Timorese descent. I put that because that's really important for her recent music. It's not so important for the song that I'm going to talk about. Her song that I'm going to talk about is 10 years old. She's best known in the experimental free jazz scene. And what is really important about the free jazz scene is this book called Black Nationalism and the Revolution in Music. So this is a movement that really got underway in the 1970s, 60s and 70s, but primarily in the 1970s with the Art Ensemble of Chicago and ensembles like that. And it started with someone like Ornette Coleman that says, what does freedom really mean if jazz is supposed to be about freedom? Why are improvisations based on this European product called a harmonic progression? Right? This is the question that Ornette Coleman asked in the early 1960s. And he began to play without a chord progression. Right? And so that really developed into black politics and really say free jazz is what freedom is. And free jazz is wild. If you don't know free jazz, I mean, it's really, really wild music. And Asian American jazz players in the 1980s were really, really very much influenced by free jazz because they really see the way forward for the Asian American movement is coalition with black radicals and Chicano radicals. And we'll talk more about John Jang shortly, but Jen Shyu was a student of John Jang's. So she was very much influenced by this movement as well. So the song that I want to talk about is called the Chinese-Cuban Question. It's a 22-minute suite. It's in 3 parts. It's from her second album, Jade Tongue, that came in 2009. And it's in 3 parts, and I think the 3 parts each do different things. The first part is really to inform and to really sort of provoke anger. The second part is to memorialize. And the third part is really to ask a question and maybe to heal. So the first 2 parts are based on text from this particular report. You can see the Cuba Commission of China, Chinese Immigration to Cuba Commission, report of the commission sent by China to ascertain the condition of Chinese coolies in Cuba. Right, this report came out in 1876, and it was the Chinese government was hearing so many bad things about how Chinese people in Cuba were treated. So the Chinese government actually, the Qing government actually sent a delegation to Cuba to take testimony from Chinese workers. And that is a report. Okay. So the text for the first 2 parts are directly from the report. Part 1 is to talk about how people were essentially kidnapped in Macau or on boats, right? They might want to work on boats, but then they were kidnapped by the sailors and then put into Cuba and sold into slavery. This is around the same time as emancipation of African slaves in Cuba. So they were looking for other types of labor, and they were treated in fairly similar ways. So, so the first movement is really to give you an idea of what the story is, because not many people, including Jen herself, she wrote this very shortly after she studied in Cuba. She wanted to study percussion in Cuba and Cuban rhythms. So she discovered a lot of Chinese people in Cuba, which of course there are, but she didn't know about this particular story until she studied in Cuba. So she wrote this shortly after she came back to the US. So this is the beginning. I'm going to play 2 excerpts of the first movement, the very beginning, and then the climax about 6 minutes in.
Decoyed here by wicked men, decoyed from Macau to the Spanish island of Cuba, decoyed, kidnapped, sold as a slave, they don't see, sold as a slave, sold by vicious men, kidnapped, sold as a slave, sugar, by vicious men, decoyed, sold as a slave, sugar, by vicious men, decoyed. sold as a slave. Kidnapped, sold as a slave. I was decoyed. Was decoyed.
Like she can only speak in short phrases because she's so angry, right? And she gets more angry than she breaks into song. And then it keeps building for about 5 or 6 minutes until you get to this point.
They were raised. Because only when 10 men were already drowned that they were raised. It was only when 10 men were already drowned that they were raised, that they were
Thoughts? Too angry? Okay, let's keep going. So in the second movement, she memorializes specific people who were in the testimonies. This is a picture of the Chinese cemetery in Havana. So the movement is called What Were the Causes? And it tells the story of specific workers, particular people who reported sick or who committed suicide. So this is a memorial, but I also want to bring up the question of what is the ethics of this memorial a little bit. How do people want to be memorialized on like the worst days of their lives?
Are sick, cared for, Chen Chin deposes. When I was sick and reported the fact to the overseer, he accused me of speaking falsely and ordering 4 men to hold me down, remove my trousers, and flogged me so severely that my flesh became lacerated. I then had to labor in irons. And at night when I returned, my wounds were rubbed with salt and lime juice, causing a pain that almost killed me.
And it's about 7 of these stories in this movement. Thoughts? Questions? Yeah.
I actually read that exact excerpt of the testimony in school, and I think it's a lot more powerful hearing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? Let's hear how this piece ends. So the third movement is a ballad. So the text is no longer from the report. It's her own text. It's asking, is there a possibility of a more humane world? And here are some of the texts, right? Will it always be a tragic demise of the innocent and wise? Or is there some kind of hope we foresee for the ones that come to be? And then here is skin rubs off and what remains, the human color of our veins. Right, because there's no color difference in the color of veins. So my question for you is, do you think this end is hopeful? This is the last minute and a half of this song.
Is it the same, or will it always be a tragic demise of the innocent and wise? Or is there some kind of hope that the pure days we foresee will be the ones that come to be? Question how that glorious deed is done. Summon the spirits from the earth, from the air, from the sky. Tell us not to lie, for the war that's born within skin rubs off, and what remains, the human color of our veins.
Her music reminds me of the African American music I used to listen to, the protest songs. It's very dark. It also has dark endings. It tells vivid storytelling of what happened to African Americans and the hatred and so forth. So this is very much kind of mimics that style of music and ends in a dark way, like that type of music that I used to listen to. It's not something I was pretty just hitting reality, but it gives you a negative feeling, which I believe is what is supposed to emote from a negative feeling. And it leaves me feeling very sad. It leaves me feeling miserable. And I'm generally a positive person, so I tend to not want to hear that type of music, even though it's reality.
Yeah, I mean, this is her closest partner, musical partner is Steve Coleman, who is a black jazz saxophonist, very, very important saxophone player. They play together all the time, and I think Steve is in this recording. So yeah, I mean, she's definitely very much involved, playing with those people who are involved in that movement.
Yeah, and it's interesting that she's Chinese from Taiwan. I wonder how they welcomed her, how they interacted. I could just get an idea. Someone who grew up in what used to be Chocolate City, I'm wondering of her experiences trying to get to know the jazz musicians and how they interacted. Because I imagine they would be very leery of her not being American, number one, and being Chinese. And many African Americans during that time had no concept of what Chinese people went through in our history. So she must have been quite I guess, an extrovert and someone who could articulate and empathize and be persuasive for them to welcome her into their world. Because it's not an easy world to break into.
Right. She has, I mean, I know her quite well, but I mean, she has the right introductions, and I mean, she is an American. I mean, she grew up in the U.S. And I mean, she does a lot of work in Taiwan these days. But yeah, she knows the right people to break into this world. And yeah, I mean, she's been in the New York free jazz scene since probably 2003, 2004, something like that. We were college friends, actually. She was an undergrad at Stanford, I was a grad student there. So, yeah. So, but after she graduated, she really just went directly to that scene, and with John Zhang's recommendations and things like that. So it smoothed things out. Yeah.
Is her heritage part Taiwanese and East Timor Indonesian?
Yeah.
So her father or mother was, that's the part I'm trying to figure out here.
Her father is Taiwanese, her mother is
Taiwan.
East Timor.
Ah, Chinese and Indonesian have a they go like this.
They met in the U.S.
Met in the U.S. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay, so